Hello everyone, this is Ishan from FPN Automation. Welcome back. In today's video, I'm excited to show you how to create some essential KPIs within Power BI. KPIs are super important for keeping track of how well a business is doing and where it can improve. They help businesses stay focused on their goals, give us a clear insight into performance, and help us make informed decisions. By regularly checking these KPIs, a business can ensure that it's on the right path and can also quickly adapt to any changes. In this video, we'll create several key financial KPIs categorized into liquid ratios, which will create quick ratio and current ratio. We'll also create, for leverage ratios, we'll create debt to equity, and for profitability ratio, we'll create return on asset. Along with that, we'll also calculate our gross profit margin, our net profit margin, and our operating profit margin. We'll be using our income statement here and balance sheet to calculate these KPIs. And also, if you recall from last video, we discussed about converting multiple currencies into one single global currency, in this case USD. So if you haven't checked that out, I highly recommend you check that out, because it's useful if your company is international and dealing with several different types of currency from several different locations, and you want to create a financial statement that is all in one currency. This could be very beneficial to a company. So we'll start with creating our liquidity ratios first, which are quick ratios and current ratio. And what liquidity ratios do is they assess a company's ability to meet short-term obligations using its most liquid assets. Quick ratio shows company's ability to cover its immediate liabilities without relying on inventory sales, providing a clear picture of a short-term financial health. And current ratio provides a broader view of liquidity, helping us understand if a company can meet its short-term obligations. We'll start by creating our quick ratio first. So in order to do that, we'll create a new measure, and we'll call it quick ratio. And for this, we'll create three variables. The first variable we can call cur assets, and we'll use calculate actual BS start. So what this does is this measure so far calculates actual values from the balance sheet at the start of the period. And then we are going to chart of accounts level 1 is equal to current assets, and close parentheses. So what this part of the formula does is it applies a filter to only include those rows in chart of accounts table where the level 1 column is equal to current assets. Next, we'll create a variable called INV for inventory, and we'll do similar calculate actual BS start, and this time we'll be using chart of accounts level 2 because that's where it's mapped to, and we'll set it equal to inventory, then close parentheses. And lastly, we'll create a variable for our current liabilities, and similarly again calculate actual BS start, comma chart of accounts again level 2, and set it equal to current liabilities. Close parentheses. Now we want to return these values and then use our formula to calculate it. So we'll use divide current assets minus our inventory divided by current liabilities. So that's our formula for quick ratio. So now if we were to drop in our card visual and select our quick ratio, as you can see, we have our quick ratio here. Next, we want to create our current ratio, and our current ratio will be fairly similar. So let's go ahead and create a new measure. We're going to name it current ratio. Set it equal to, again, we'll create two variables again. First one, current assets, is equal to, it's the same formula from before. Calculate actual BS start, chart of accounts level 1 equal to current assets, close parentheses, and then we will create another variable similar as our previous current liabilities is equal to calculate actual BS start, chart of accounts level 2 is equal to current piece. Now we'll return and then do our calculation, which is divide current assets by current liabilities. So this is our formula for current ratio. And what this formula is, again, I'll recap, which is similar to our previous formulas. What it does, it measures, calculates the actual values from the balance sheet at start of the period. And then it applies a filter to only include those rows in chart of accounts table where level 1 column equals current assets, and for current liabilities, a level 2 column where it equals current liabilities. And now let's drop in another card visual and select our current ratio. There we go. So now we have our liquidity ratios. Now we'll move on to our leverage ratios. So what leverage ratios are, they assess the extent of a company's financing through debt versus equity, showing the balance between borrowed funds and owed funds. And debt to equity ratio basically helps us understand the financial risk and the leverage of the company, indicating the balance between the risk of borrowed funds and owed funds. So in order to create that, we will create another new measure and we'll call it our debt to equity and set it equal to divide our total liabilities by our total equity. So this is it. This is the formula for our debt to equity, because we're trying to just create a ratio to gauge the risk by our borrowed funds versus our owed funds. And again, let's go ahead and drop another visual right here, and now we'll use our debt to equity. So we have our debt to equity. Now we're going to go ahead and proceed to our last ratios, profitability ratios, and then we'll go ahead and also calculate our net profit margin, gross profit margin, and operating profit margins. So Profitability ratios measure how efficiently a company uses its asset to generate profit. Hence, return on asset, which basically measures a company's use of its assets to generate profit. Like how effectively it can generate profit using those assets. So let's go ahead and create that measure. We'll call it return on assets is equal to, and for this particular formula we will create again two variables. First one we will name it income, net income, and we'll set it equal to calculate from actuals. Notice actuals and not actual be a start. I'll explain that. All chart of accounts, all chart of accounts statement is equal to income statement, and close our parentheses. So what this does is we're getting actuals value from our income statement, and then we remove any filter that might have been applied to chart of accounts table, and then we apply filter to only includes row in chart of accounts table where the statement column is equal to income statement. The next variable we'll create is var assets, and we'll use calculate, and then this time we'll use actual be a start, and chart of account level 0 where we'll set it equal to assets, and then we'll return. So now what we're doing is we're getting the actual values from our balance sheet at start of the period, and we're setting applying a filter to include only those rows in chart of accounts table where level 0 column equals to asset. And lastly, we'll use our formula to calculate it. Net income divided by assets. And as we can see, we have our return on asset ratio. So we'll drop in another visual card and look for our return on asset, and there we have it. And lastly, we'll just calculate our net profit margin, operating profit margin, and our gross profit margin. In order to do that, we'll create three measures. First one, let's go ahead and create our gross profit margin, and the formula for that will be divide gross profit by revenue. And now let's go ahead and drop another visual card and select our net profit meant gross profit margin. There we have it, and then we can just set it as a percentage. Now let's go ahead and create a measure for net profit margin. Let's set it equal to divide net profit divided by net revenue. And we'll do the same thing set it equal to percent format it as percent. And lastly, we need our operating profit margin. So once again, we'll create our measure, operating profit margin equal to divide operating profit divided by net revenue. And let's go ahead and create another visual, and operating profit margin, set it as percentage. There we go. So now we have created all the measures and ratios we needed to create, and let me just explain the gross profit, net profit, and operating profit margins. Gross profit margin shows the efficiency of productions and the basic profitability of core operations. Operating profit margin indicates the profitability of core business operations. And lastly, the net profit margin reflects the overall profitability of a company after all expenses, including tax and interest. And then you can I have created a simple dashboard that I've shown you before. You can create something like this that's catered towards your company's need. Always remember, you always eat with your eyes first. So the more visually appealing it is, the more attention it's going to get. And that's all for this video. Thank you so much. If you like it, give it a like, subscribe, and also if you have any feedback or any ideas you want us to make a video on, please feel free to leave a comment. And you can also check us out at fpautomation.co and see what we do and what services we offer. Thank you so much again.